Hello everybody, how are you doing? Good, I hope. So, we're getting real close to the end of Season 0 for Marvel Rivals, and despite it basically just being a demo season, I've had a ton of fun with it. But we're not really here to talk about my review or anything, no. If you want to see that though, go watch this video here. But no, we're here to talk about something a bit more interesting. The lore. And trust me, there is a shocking amount of it for such a small season. Truth be told, I didn't really expect, well, anything story-wise for launch. Because this is a shorter season, my expectations were basically just an introduction to the premise of Doom versus Doom 2099, and that's it. But, to my surprise, I was very, very wrong. Like, there's a hefty amount of lore for each map, character, and even the collectibles. So, with all these juicy bits of story to discuss, we're gonna need someone with a ludicrous amount of knowledge on the many various aspects of Marvel lore to decipher this story and figure out what is coming next. It's me. I'm talking about me, by the way. So, with my ego now increasing the size of my head to be about 3 times bigger than normal, may as well give me some ropes, call me the Watcher, because I'm gonna be your guide to the lore of Marvel Rivals Season 0, along with my personal theory as to where the story is actually gonna lead into. So, before we begin, while there is an incredible amount of lore for Rivals already, for this video I'll only be covering the parts of the lore pertaining to Season 0, along with any side notes I feel like I should mention. I'm doing this because, for one, there is entire pages of lore for every character in the game, and while I do enjoy gushing about the story, reading, then taking notes, and then formatting the lore of over 33 characters into digestible bytes for a script that is meant to fill about 10 to 20 minutes it's just too much work and would blow up this video's runtime. So, because of that, I'll mainly be sticking to the lore learned through the introduction of the game and the Entangled Moments event. Another thing is, if you follow Rivals' storyline, you're probably wondering, will I talk about the actual Marvel Rivals comic books on Marvel Unlimited? And to that I say, while I definitely recommend reading through them if you're interested in the lore, I won't really be talking about them here, mainly because the books don't really add much to the general plot. It's mainly just the interactions of the characters, which is fine for a comic, but doesn't really add much to what we're talking about today. In fact, the story of the comics is actually just a closer look at one of the plot lines we learned from Entangled Moments. So, there really isn't anything new we learned from the issues currently out. But if there's a huge plot reveal in the next few issues, I'll probably mention it next time I do one of these, if I do another one of these. Anyway, let's get into the surprisingly deep lore for Doom's Rise. Oh, and really quick plug/reminder, there's a ton of cool things coming to Fortnite soon, so if you're planning on picking any of those up, please consider using creator code Yerocmai in the item shop. I'd greatly appreciate it. Anyway, onto the video. Now, before we get into the juicy parts of the lore, let's go over the basic plot of Marvel Rivals for those who aren't already familiar. The story starts with Dr. Doom experimenting with forces beyond the average mortal's control. You know, as Doom tends to do. But little did Doom know that Dr. Doom from the year 2099 is also meddling with cosmic forces beyond the average mortal's control. You know, as Doom 2099 also tends to do. And because the two Dooms are both messing with time at the same time, kind of like, you know, one is from the future timeline, so technically not at the same time, but, you know, time travel stuff. You guys get the idea. Anyway, because of the two Dooms' experiments, time essentially shatters and collapses in on itself, creating what is known as the time stream entanglement, and the byproduct of the entanglement, chronovium, which, according to Galacta, is savory and sweet. You know, speaking of Galacta, as far as I know, she's just kind of here to, like, eat chronovium and watch whatever happens here. And honestly, she's so real for that. Hey, Future Euro here, turns out, actually, Galacta is responsible for keeping the time stream entanglement from collapsing in on itself. So, now that I'm aware of that little bit of lore, I can now say she's even more real. Anyway, back to the general story. So now, multiple different universes/timelines are affected by the effects of the entanglement, which leads directly into the lore from the Entangled Moments event, which we'll get into soon. Anyway, to finish off the basic lore of the game, now we've got a Doom, who you all know has an ego bigger than the Watcher's head in my future, and another Doom who, spoiler alert, also has a huge ego, fighting each other, because, of course, no one in the same space as Doom can rival Doom. even if that other person is also Doom, but blue and from the future. You know, little side note here, but the raw premise for this game's story is, it's just so genuinely hysterical, like in a good way, obviously, but I just love it. It's so Doom-like for Doom to have beef with himself. It's just so funny, man. And adding on to that, I've mentioned before how happy I am that Marvel Rivals is showcasing more obscure comic book characters, but like, when I said that, I totally forgot to mention how excited I am that Doom 2099 is being used in this way. Like, he's one of the most 90s comic book characters out there, and I cannot recommend his original comic run enough. It's a lot of fun. It's pretty goofy at times, but it's goofy in that 90s RoboCop kind of way. Anyway, back to the topic you all clicked on to see, the lore. So, with that basic premise out of the way, let's jump into the juicy stuff we learned in the Entangled Moments event. Something you'll probably notice about the storylines from the Entangled Moments is they all kind of give more context and background to the objectives on each map, along with some bonus character lore sprinkled in, which I really appreciate because it's just neat to know why we're working with either Loki or Thor on Asgard, or Spider-Zero and the Master Weaver on the Tokyo map. You guys get the idea. Anyway, onto the first major story. The first storyline in the event is Family Affairs, which focuses on Asgard and the Asgardian characters. So, little side note before we begin, this story is told to us in-game by Radaskir, who, if you're not familiar with Norse mythology, but you are familiar with the God of War series, it's this little fella. Although if you know him from Marvel, he's not quite a little fella, but you get the point. Anyway, so like the vast majority of Loki's schemes, this one starts with Odin taking his bi-yearly scheduled nap time known as the Odin Sleep. Basically, to summarize it, being an all-powerful god is hard. So Odin's feeling a bit eepy and needs to recharge his god power. And as per usual, Loki immediately gets to work on his grand scheme to rule Asgard. You know, as a Loki tends to do. However, unlike usual, the difference is because of the time stream entanglement caused by Doom and Doom 99, Yggdrasil, the World Tree, has grown out of control and fused with Asgard to create Yggdrasil. So if any of you were wondering why the Asgard maps aren't just called Asgard, that's why. So, not only did the time stream entanglement cause Yggdrasil to grow out of control, it also caused Yggdrasil to be infused with chronal energy, which resulted in Yggdrasil's sap being a bit more powerful than usual, and honestly, it's likely just a liquefied version of the chronovium we talked about earlier. And Loki, you know, being Loki, immediately used that sap to gain more power, which has me wondering, did Loki also eat and or drink the chronovium? Like, what is it with these people and tasting the crystallized time energy thing? Is there something upon seeing it that makes people just go, yummers? Anyway, with his newfound power that he got from licking something that no truly sane person would think to lick, and an alliance he made with Hela, he actually managed to take over Asgard and banish Thor to a special prison tower, which is expanded upon in Thor's lore entry, so if you want to know more about that, read that. But we'll ignore his side of things for now. So yeah, Loki kinda won. The biggest takeaway though is Loki and Hela's agreement. Hela's condition for joining Loki was she wanted to extend her kingdom into the land of the living. But Radaskir implies that this is mainly a front and that she has some secret plan or objective. Anyway, to finish this story off, Thor eventually broke out. Now him and his brother are fighting as they, tend to do. And that is what is going on in the Yggdrasil. You know, that place. I'm gonna be real. This is like improv right here. Having to say Yggdrasil over and over is kind of like made me realize I don't know if I know how to pronounce Yggdrasil. So, sorry if that's completely wrong. Anyway, on to the next one. Alright, I won't lie to you, this is one of the instances of story in this game that we'll mainly speed through. Not because it's boring or anything, quite the opposite. Spider-Zero and the Master Weaver, also known as Karn for those who read the comics, disagreeing about the time stream entanglement is kinda interesting. It's just we've already known most of the lore from this one since the beta, and the lore we get from the Entangled Moments event doesn't really add anything new to the plot, so I'll quickly recap this one so we can get back to the new juicy developments. Similar to what happened with Yggdrasil, the Doom on Doom action has caused chronal energy to open up a rift above Tokyo 2099, and that rift is deteriorating the web of life and destiny. Now, if you don't read comics, you're probably asking, what is the web of life and destiny? And to that, I respond, basically the spider-themed duct tape that helps keep parts of the multiverse together. You know, it's nothing huge aside from the fact if it goes out, bad stuff happens. Anyway, you'd think because this rift is absolutely having negative effects on the web, you think it'd be in the best interest of the Master Weaver to close it, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because much like Loki, he wants to use the chrono energy for his own plan. But unlike the absolute freak that is Loki, instead of licking the energy, Karn wants to keep the rift open so he can harvest it, with the intent of using that to kind of reinforce the web of life and destiny itself. Spider-Zero, on the other hand, sees how this is an insanely bad idea, and she wants to close it. And Karn, being the salty former inheritor that he is, handles this rationally, and has a civil discussion. Just kidding, he banishes her to Tokyo, which causes Spider-Zero to recruit a bunch of multiversal spider people, notably Penny Parker, to help her close the rift anyway, and that's what's going on in this map. This is probably the simplest story that we learned from Entangled Moments, mainly because it's just more of what you'd already expect to see from a Hydra scheme. There's nothing really substantial about it on its own, but it does have a lot of interesting setups for future plots. Anyway, it goes like this. It's a report between two Hydra agents complaining about their current posting. There's also a Hydra Bob reference right there, so yay! They mention how Bucky tried to infiltrate the Hydra base they're stationed on, and, well, he failed miserably, to say the least. In fact, the majority of the story is just the consequences of Bucky failing his attempt at a Metal Gear-style break-in. Anyway, so he fails, gets kidnapped. It's rumored they reinstalled the whole murder soldier program into him. You know, the usual thing they do with him. But the big thing is that the occult ops had Bucky transferred to their division with the intent of using him as a conduit to open a portal to Maveth. Which is interesting because Maveth, as far as I remember, is a piece of lore from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not the comic books. And I will admit, I had to do a lot of extra research for this because, while I am aware of Maveth, I don't actually remember it being used anywhere major in the comic books. And as far as my research could tell, I'm right, it's not really used as anything major. And even in the comics, anything I could find on Maveth indicates it's more of them just reusing the name of the planet for another planet. So it doesn't really have anything to do with Hydra. Little side note here, but researching Maveth also made me realize something about the Hydra objective. You see, it's obvious we're kind of freeing Hive when we win on the Hydra team, but I kind of assumed it was Hive imprisoned in this structure here, but researching the lore made me realize, I don't think this is a prison, I think this is the portal to Maveth, and they're taking the whole Hive was banished to Maveth plotline from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for their version 2. I would also like to preface this by saying I haven't read the Winter Soldier's in-game lore yet, so maybe this is super common knowledge and I'm just being an idiot. Who knows? Now, the next two stories are easily the most interesting ones, because trust me, the lore here is real juicy. And not only that, but these two stories are directly connected, so there is a lot to go over here, and this one has a really interesting implication for the future of this plotline. Anyway, this one follows T'Challa as he prays to Bast, who may or may not be corrupted to some extent, who knows. So T'Challa decides, hey, I should probably check into the astral plane and see what's up with Bast, which, to be fair, completely reasonable idea. So T'Challa does the whole ritual to enter the ancestral plane, and much to his surprise, it's completely empty, which, for an afterlife, is that's very concerning. Bast then appears before T'Challa, and asks for absolute loyalty, which I guess isn't a completely unexpected demand from a goddess, but at the same time, Bast is kinda acting off. She keeps demanding loyalty, getting more and more aggressive. This, understandably so, freaks out T'Challa, so he nopes out of the ancestral plane, and as he wakes up, in the water below him, he sees an image of Bast, distorted and corrupted by a red and black aura. T'Challa then vows to figure out what is wrong and to eventually restore Bast, which leads directly into the next story. So, while T'Challa still has, a general faith in Bast, even though she's a little, evil now, Shuri, on the other hand, has completely lost faith in the gods. Shuri has heard whispers from Bast in her dreams, and what she heard terrifies her. So, Shuri, being the absolute genius that she is, almost immediately figures out that Bast, who is now corrupted by an unknown force, is trying to manipulate T'Challa into unleashing darkness upon Wakanda. And sure, Shuri could do something about it herself, but she also knows that doing that would arouse suspicion from everyone, including T'Challa, if she investigated this on her own. And to be fair, I'm assuming telling everyone here that Bast has abandoned us and is corrupted by a dark force could probably be classed as treason and heresy at the same time, so Shuri is totally valid for not doing that. And besides, much like Loki the Freak and Karn over there, she's busy researching Chronovium, and the fusion of Chronovium and Vibranium, Chronovibranium, which, thanks for being an easy name to pronounce, unlike Asgard. Anyway, since this is a pressing issue, she makes the logical choice to call upon the Guardians of the Galaxy of all people to handle it. Because, sure, what's the worst that could happen with that group, right? Anyway, the Guardians manage to track the Dark Force to a planet on the edge of the universe. Shuri loses contact with the Guardians shortly after they arrive, with the only information she learned before losing contact is that the planet that has the Dark Force on it is Clintar. And that's the recap finished. Now, let's get into the speculation part of this video. Now, where do I think these specific plotlines are going? Now, while I'm sure the Loki, Web Warrior, and Hydra plots are going to continue later on, I'd instead like to focus on the Wakanda and Guardians plotline because that is definitely the most interesting one right now. So, it's pretty obvious to anyone who knows about symbiote lore that the dark force that's corrupting Bast is Null, god of the symbiotes. I've also kind of got to come clean here. I may have omitted some details from the stories to add some suspense and mystery, like this art piece here that you get for finishing the Wakanda and Entangled Moments challenges. You see, I edited it to hide the fact that Bast here, that's just straight up Null's logo and the spiral. And another thing is, in T'Challa's lore page, Bast admits to the fact she's starting to favor another king in black. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's Null. So, let's work with that. My theory for the next major piece of lore is this. I believe that Null is going to successfully resurrect somehow. Whether that be through T'Challa making a mistake, or even Venom doing something accidentally. I think any of that will lead into Null being the main villain for a future season. Now, my personal guess is probably season 2 or 3, because, side note, as I finish the script for this recap, Rivals dropped the teaser for season 1, and, it looks like it's themed about both the Fantastic Four and vampires. And, don't get me wrong, I'm stoked for the Fantastic Four to come to the game. You guys know I'm a huge Fantastic Four fan, so, yeah. But, at least I didn't drop this video last week. Imagine I pop off on my theory about, how Null's coming to the game season 1, only for it to immediately be disproven, so, at least now I can course correct, and, yeah, Null for season 2, baby! Jokes aside, though, it's obvious they're setting up Null for an important role in the future. Not only is there all these story beats pointing directly to Null, he even cameoed in the launch trailer. He also looks sick there, so, yippee! So yeah, Null season 2 or 3. That's my big theory for right now. But yeah, that was my lore recap for season 0. Please let me know if you would like to see more of this sort of thing. Not gonna lie, writing the notes along with the script for this video was a lot of fun, and I'm sure you guys know this by now, but I love fanboying about Marvel stuff, and I will gladly keep doing it if you guys like it. As of recording this, I think the next video to come out will be the first in the revised wishlist series idea I had, which is now me making concepts for characters and Rivals. Basically, it's those wishlist videos I did, but instead of only talking about characters I want, I'll instead be just making the concepts for groups of characters in general, not just the ones that I want to see. And as decided by this poll here, the first set of characters we'll be talking about are mutants. So, if you like those wishlist videos, please look forward to this series. I think y'all will really like it. And as always, if you're looking to support the channel, you can now become a true supporter through the membership. Members get exclusive content such as loyalty badges, super cool emotes, early access to new videos, along with the shoutout at the end of every video, and other various perks. And like I mentioned earlier, if you play Fortnite and would like to support me through that, make sure to use code Yerocmai in the item shop. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, man, I can't wait to play as the thing. Milady, 'tis the clobbering hour, let's go!